I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to return home and find my life turned into something out of a late-night crime drama. But there I was, standing in my own front hallway, my suitcase barely touching the floor, when I realized something was terribly wrong. The first thing that hit me was the silence. Normally, my home in suburban Vermont always greeted me with the familiar hum of the old refrigerator, the faint ticking of the wall clock, and the soft scent of lavender from the diffuser I kept on the console table. But that afternoon there was nothing, just a heavy, eerie stillness that made my skin prickle. My name is Margaret Whitfield, though my friends call me Maggie. I'm an 85-year-old retired pediatric surgeon from Johns Hopkins Hospital, and I've been living alone since my husband, Charles, passed away a decade ago. I may be in my 80s, but I'm still strong enough to shovel my own driveway and keep my roses trimmed just right. I've been told my sharp blue eyes and still blonde hair, thank you genetics, and maybe a touch of salon magic, make me look younger than I am. But that day, as I stood in my foyer gripping my cane a little tighter, I felt every one of my years. I had just returned from a week-long trip to see my younger brother, Henry, in Boston. It wasn't a pleasure trip. Henry's health has been shaky, and I wanted to spend some time with him while I could. I'd left my house locked tight, my alarm system armed, and my most precious belongings stored in the locked chest in my bedroom. That chest contained not just my expensive jewelry collection, pieces Charles had given me over our 40 years together, but also a small fireproof folder holding confidential documents. My will, property deeds, stock certificates, and a few letters I'd never wanted anyone to see. I rolled my suitcase toward the living room, my heels clicking against the polished hardwood floor. That's when I noticed the rug. My grandmother's Persian rug was crooked. I never leave it crooked. My pulse quickened. Maggie, you're just tired, I muttered to myself. Stop being paranoid. But when I turned toward the hallway leading to my bedroom, I froze. The door to my bedroom was wide open. I never leave it open when I'm gone. And from where I stood I could see the chest, my locked chest, sitting there with its lid flung open like the gaping mouth of a fish. I dropped my suitcase and hurried down the hallway, my cane tapping fast against the floor. The inside of the chest was empty. Completely empty. My rings, my necklaces, my diamond tennis bracelet. All gone. The folder with my documents gone. It felt like someone had scooped my whole life into their arms and walked away with it. My breath came in shallow bursts, panic flooding my chest. I turned to grab my phone from my purse when I noticed something else, something far stranger. From the corner of my eye, I caught the faint flicker of movement. Not in the hallway, not outside the window, but from the guest room at the end of the hall. That door was closed. I hadn't closed it when I left. In fact, I rarely even used that room except when Henry visited. I moved closer, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. The smell hit me first, something musty and sharp like unwashed clothes mixed with fear. And then I heard it, a muffled sound, like someone trying to talk through a gag. I shoved the door open and gasped so hard my vision blurred. There, in the middle of my guest bed, was a woman. Stranger. Her wrists and ankles were tied with thick rope. Her mouth was covered with duct tape. Her hair was a tangled mess of chestnut curls, her face pale and streaked with tears. She looked no older than 30. She struggled to sit up when she saw me, her wide hazel eyes full of desperation. What on earth? My voice cracked. I took a step back, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. Who was she? Why was she in my house? And how long had she been there? Her muffled cries grew louder, her eyes darting toward the window like she was afraid someone might come back. My hands shook as I reached for the duct tape, but before I could peel it away, the sound of a floorboard creaking behind me made my blood run cold. I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs, and that's when I saw the shadow stretching across the hallway floor, growing longer, closer. For a second I couldn't move. The shadow on the hallway floor wasn't just still, it shifted as if its owner was leaning forward, waiting for me to turn. My instincts screamed at me to run, but 85-year-old knees don't move as fast as they used to. Instead, I tightened my grip on my cane. I've been in operating rooms where a child's life was hanging by a thread, and I've had to keep my hands steady while my heart raced. This was worse. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to sound calm. "Who's there?" No answer. The shadow moved again, slow, deliberate. My eyes darted to the bed, to the woman with the gag still in her mouth. Her eyes widened even more, and she shook her head violently. It wasn't a no shake. It was a don't turn around shake. But I did. Standing in my bedroom doorway was a man I had never seen before in my life. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a lean, wiry build. His hair was shaggy and dark, his jaw covered in stubble, and his eyes were cold. Not angry, not panic, just calculating. And in his right hand he held a hammer. My breath caught. I took a step backward, positioning myself between him and the tied-up woman without even thinking about it. "This is my home," I said, my voice trembling but loud enough to fill the room. "You need to leave Before you what?" he interrupted, his tone mocking, almost amused. "Call the cops. You think they'll get here before I can?" He trailed off, glancing at the woman, then at me. His smile was small and tight, the kind that never reaches the eyes. I tightened my grip on my cane. "If you know what's good for you, you'll get out of my house right now. Whatever you took, leave it here." His gaze flicked toward the empty chest in my bedroom, and for a split second I saw it, a glimmer of pride. He had taken my jewelry, my documents, probably more. "You weren't supposed to be back yet," he said, stepping into the room. "And now you've seen her. That's a problem." He gestured toward the bed with the hammer. The woman let out a muffled whimper, tears spilling down her cheeks. Something inside me hardened. I've seen enough tragedy in my lifetime to know that sometimes you can't negotiate with certain people. Sometimes you have to create your own opening and take it. I shifted my cane slightly, my thumb pressing against the small button near the handle. Most people think it's just for walking. They don't know I had it custom-made years ago after Charles passed away. A discreet, built-in stun device. A little insurance for an old woman living alone. But before I could act, the man's head jerked toward the hallway. His eyes narrowed. Then I heard it too. The faint rumble of a car engine outside. His expression darkened. He moved toward the window and peeked through the blinds. "Stay here," he muttered, mostly to himself. Then he glanced at me. "If you move, she pays for it." He pointed the hammer at the woman before slipping out into the hallway. Waited. Counted to 3 in my head. Then I moved. I hurried to the bed and tore the tape from her mouth. She gasped, coughing hard. "Please," she whispered hoarsely. "We have to get out. He's dangerous, Hill." "Not now," I hissed, already working on the rope around her wrists. "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" She flinched as I tugged the knot loose. He brought me here 3 days ago. I don't even know where we are. I woke up tied to this bed. I think he was using your house as some kind of hideout." 3 days. My stomach churned. That meant he'd broken in while I was in Boston and stayed here. In my home. "Do you know where my things are?" I asked quickly, freeing her wrists before moving to her ankles. "I saw him with a duffel bag. He kept going into your garage," she said. "He's been looking through your papers. He made calls." "What kind of calls?" I think he's selling something. Maybe your jewelry. But he seemed more interested in your documents." "My documents?" My mind jumped to the property deeds. My late husband had left me ownership of a small piece of land in upstate New York, a property some developer had been eyeing for years. If those papers got into the wrong hands. The sound of a door slamming shut downstairs snapped me back. The man's footsteps were heavy now, coming back down the hall. I grabbed the woman's hand. "In the closet. Now." We scrambled into the narrow guest room closet, the smell of mothballs and cedar filling my nose. I pulled the door almost shut, leaving just enough of a crack to see. The man entered the room, muttering under his breath. He glanced at the bed, saw the rope cut and froze. His head whipped around. "Where are you?" he growled, stepping toward the bed. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I held my cane ready, my finger near the button for the stun device. Then, just as he bent down to look under the bed, the sound of shattering glass came from downstairs. He straightened instantly, eyes wide. Without another word, he bolted from the room. The woman beside me looked at me in panic. "What now?" she whispered. I didn't answer. Instead, I pushed the closet door open just enough to peer out. From downstairs I heard voices. Not just his. More than one. And they weren't speaking kindly. Whoever had broken that glass, they weren't here to save us. I've lived through medical emergencies, family betrayals, and the slow heartbreak of losing the man I loved, but nothing prepared me for the sound of multiple strangers moving through my home. The shattering glass downstairs was followed by a heavy thud, like boots stomping over broken shards. Voices, male, deep, fast, filled the silence, their words muffled by the distance but sharp enough for my pulse to spike. The man with the hammer, my intruder, was now shouting. "What the hell are you doing here?" A second voice shot back, rough and full of mockery. "Relax, Mason. We just came for what you promised us." Mason. So now I had a name. The woman in the closet with me, still trembling from being untied, leaned closer. "Do you know them?" she whispered. I shook my head, my eyes locked on the crack in the closet door. "No. But I think Mason's in trouble." Downstairs there was a loud crash. "Table maybe." Mason's voice turned sharp, desperate. "You weren't supposed to come here. I told you I needed more time." "You've had 3 days," another man's voice said, low and dangerous. "The deal's done. Either you hand over the documents or we take them, and everything else right now." My documents. They were talking about my documents. I felt the old familiar knot in my stomach from my years in the ore, the one that always came before something went wrong. I thought of those papers. My will, Charles's business contracts, the deed to that piece of land upstate. In the wrong hands they could ruin me. The woman beside me squeezed my arm. "We have to get out of here," she whispered urgently. "We can't," I murmured. "Not yet. Not until I know where my things are." We heard heavy footsteps on the stairs, more than one set this time. Mason was leading them, maybe trying to keep them from searching the wrong rooms. I pulled the closet door closed completely, leaving us in darkness. My heart thudded in my ears. The footsteps stopped outside the guest room. One of the new men chuckled. "What's this, Mason? Your little secret?" The door creaked open, and even through the crack of light under the closet door, I could see their shadows stretch across the floor. "She's gone," Mason snapped. I had to move her." "Liar," the rough-voiced man growled. I heard the sound of a bed being shoved aside, then drawers pulled open and slammed shut. The woman in the closet pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. Then came the sound I dreaded, the slow, deliberate creak of footsteps heading toward the closet. I tightened my grip on my cane, thumb ready over the stun button. I told myself that if the door opened, I'd hit the first man I saw. No hesitation. The footsteps stopped inches away from us. I could hear the man's breathing through the thin wooden door. Then, he laughed. "Nothing in here," he said, turning away. Relief rushed through me so hard I nearly collapsed. But then I realized. His voice wasn't moving away. He was still standing there. A second later, the closet door flung open. The light flooded in so fast it blinded me. I swung my cane hard, catching him across the jaw with a satisfying crack. He stumbled back, swearing, and I pressed the stun button. The electric snap filled the air as I drove the tip of the cane into his chest. He convulsed, dropping to his knees, and the woman bolted out of the closet. "Run!" shouted. We tore into the hallway, my cane tapping furiously against the floor. Mason appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes wide. "What the?" Before he could finish, the woman shoved past him, sending him sprawling against the railing. I followed, but Mason's hand shot out, grabbing my arm. His grip was like steel. "You're not going anywhere, old lady," he hissed. I drove the cane into his shin. He yelped, letting go just long enough for me to push past him and stumble down the stairs. The living room was chaos. One man groaning on the couch with a cut over his eyebrow, another rifling through my desk drawers. The woman was already at the front door, fumbling with the lock. "Behind you!" he yelled. She ducked just as the second man lunged, his hand swiping empty air. I swung the cane again, catching him in the ribs. He cursed, clutching his side. Finally the lock gave and the front door swung open. Cold air rushed in, and for a split second freedom felt possible. But then, another figure appeared in the doorway. A woman this time. Tall, broad-shouldered, with bleach blonde hair and a smirk that made my skin crawl. "Going somewhere," she said, blocking the exit. The tied-up woman, my unexpected houseguest, froze. I stepped forward, cane in hand. "Who are you?" The blonde woman's smirk widened. "The one you really need to be afraid of." And before I could react, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something that made my blood run cold. My pearl necklace. Charles's last gift to me before he died. She dangled it in front of me like bait. "Let's talk, Maggie." For a moment, I forgot about the cold air rushing in from the open door. All I could see was that pearl necklace swaying in the blonde woman's hand. It wasn't just jewelry to me. It was a piece of Charles. I remembered the day he gave it to me, standing in the garden with a shy smile saying, "For all the years you've given me, Maggie. And for all the ones we still have ahead." Now, it dangled from the fingers of a stranger who looked like she'd enjoy crushing it under her boot just to watch me cry. I forced my voice to stay steady. "That doesn't belong to you." She tilted her head, examining me like I was some rare insect she'd found in her kitchen. "Neither does the land you're sitting on, sweetheart. Not for long, anyway." My stomach clenched. The land. So she knew about the property upstate. Behind me, Mason's heavy steps creaked on the stairs. "Valerie, I told you to wait in the car." Valerie. The name fit her, sharp and hard. She didn't look at Mason, her eyes still fixed on me. "You've been wasting time, Mason. We had a deal. The documents, the jewelry, the cash. Then we're out. But instead I find you playing house with a hostage and—" She glanced at the younger woman still frozen near the hallway. "A spare complication." The younger woman's hands clenched into fists. "I'm not a complication. I'm a victim." Valerie's smile was ice-cold. "Victims are only victims until they stop being useful. Then they're just loose ends." Something in me snapped. I stepped forward, planting my cane on the floor with a sharp tap. "You're in my home, you've stolen my things, and you've tied up this poor girl. The police—" "Oh, stop," Valerie interrupted, rolling her eyes. "The police aren't coming. You think we didn't cut your phone line the moment we got here? And your alarm system? Mason's good for something after all." Mason muttered something under his breath, clearly irritated, but Valerie's presence seemed to override his authority. I shifted my weight slightly, angling my body so my cane's stun device was pointed in her general direction. If I could get close enough. But Valerie caught the movement and smirked. "Don't even think about it, Grandma. You'll be on the floor before you can blink." She stepped forward, tossing the pearl necklace onto my coffee table like it was nothing. "Here's the thing, Maggie. We know about your late husband's assets. The land, the stocks, the hidden accounts. We also know there's a will that gives you power over all of it. And that will. That's what we want," Mason added. "We've got buyers lined up. Big buyers." I kept my face neutral, though my mind was racing. They didn't have the will yet. That meant it was still somewhere in the house, or hidden somewhere they hadn't found. "I don't have it," I lied. Valerie's eyes narrowed. "You're going to make me ask twice." She moved toward me, slow and deliberate. The younger woman, the one Mason had tied up, shifted closer to me, as if instinctively seeking protection. Then from outside a sharp honk split the air. Valerie froze, glancing toward the open door. Mason's head snapped up. "Who the hell?" Another honk longer this time. Then a voice shouted from the driveway. "Mrs. Whitfield. It's Ron from across the street. I saw your lights on, just checking in." "One. My neighbor. Retired firefighter, widower, kind man. He usually kept to himself, but I'd baked him pies a few times. He must have noticed the unfamiliar cars." Valerie's smile turned into a scowl. "Get rid of him," she hissed at Mason. Mason moved toward the door, but I stepped in front of him, blocking the way. "If Ron sees anything suspicious, he'll call the cops," I said, my voice louder than before, hoping Ron could hear me. Valerie's eyes darkened. "Last chance, Maggie. Move." I didn't. Mason's patience snapped. He grabbed my arm hard, shoving me toward the wall. Pain shot up my shoulder, but I stayed on my feet. The younger woman seized the distraction. She lunged for the coffee table, snatching up the pearl necklace and hurling it out the open door toward the driveway. Ron's voice came again, closer now. "Hey, who's in there?" Panic flickered in Mason's eyes. Valerie swore under her breath. "This is getting messy," she muttered. "Change of plan." She reached into her coat pocket again, and this time when her hand came out, she wasn't holding jewelry. She was holding a small black pistol. The room went silent. Mason's jaw tightened. "Val, shut up," she snapped. Then she turned the gun toward Ron's voice outside. "No more witnesses." My heart slammed into my ribs. Ron didn't know what he was walking into, and in that instant I realized that if I didn't act now, my neighbor might not make it to the next minute. I shifted my grip on my cane, thumb pressing hard on the stun button, and took one step toward Valerie. But before I could move again, the sound of heavy boots and the crackle of a radio filled the air. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Valerie's eyes went wide, and for the first time since I'd seen her, she looked unsure. The words "police, drop the weapon" hit the room like a lightning strike. Valerie's gun didn't waver at first, but I saw her fingers twitch, her calculating expression falter. Mason froze halfway between the door and the staircase, glancing between her and the front porch like a trapped animal. Ron's voice came again from outside, shakier this time. "Officers in here. They've got Mrs. Whitfield." That was all it took for the younger woman, still standing just a step behind me, to whisper, "Now." I pressed the stun button on my cane and lunged. My shoulder screamed in protest, but I drove the cane forward, aiming for Valerie's ribs. The electric snap filled the air. Valerie jerked violently, her grip on the gun loosening. It clattered to the hardwood floor. "Gun!" one of the officers outside shouted, and in seconds, heavy boots pounded across my porch. Two uniformed officers burst into the living room, weapons drawn. "Hands where I can see them," one barked. Mason put his hands up slowly, his eyes darting toward Valerie. She raised hers too, still trembling from the stun. For the first time since this nightmare began, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. But then the second officer stepped forward, his gaze locking on Valerie. And instead of cuffing her immediately, he gave her the smallest, sharpest nod I've ever seen. It was gone in an instant, but I caught it. "So did she?" Her lips curled into a faint smirk. "About time," Valerie said. My stomach sank. She knows him. The other officer, a woman with her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, didn't notice, or pretended not to. She moved to secure Mason while the male officer stepped closer to Valerie. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone suddenly less commanding, more conversational. "They broke into my home," I said sharply, pointing to Mason and Valerie. "They've stolen from me, they tied up that young woman." But Valerie cut me off. "She's confused. Poor thing's been under a lot of stress. Isn't that right, Officer Daniels?" The name hit me like a slap. Daniels. I'd seen that name in the local paper, once in connection with a messy internal affairs case that mysteriously disappeared from headlines. Officer Daniels didn't deny knowing her. Instead, he crouched, picked up her gun, and slipped it into a plastic evidence bag with an almost casual efficiency. "Let's step outside and talk," he said to her. "Wait, no." I stepped forward, planting my cane on the floor. "She stays here. She's dangerous." Daniel's eyes flicked to me, cold now. "Ma'am, I'm handling it." The younger woman beside me leaned close, whispering, "He's not taking her to the station." I knew she was right. Every nerve in my body screamed that Valerie wasn't going to jail tonight. Not if Daniels had anything to do with it. But before I could act, Mason made his move. While the female officer was focused on cuffing him, he twisted hard, breaking her grip, and shoved her back into the coffee table. She stumbled but didn't fall. Daniels turned as if to stop him, but his movement was too slow, too deliberate. Valerie used the chaos. She ducked toward the door, Daniels moving with her as though shielding her from view. Ron, still standing near the porch, shouted, "Hey, where are you?" But the slam of a car door cut him off. An engine roared to life. "Stop them!" I yelled, my voice cracking. The female officer darted toward the porch, but by the time she got there, the car was already backing down my driveway. Mason, still half-cuffed, bolted toward the kitchen. The younger woman and I instinctively followed. She because she didn't want to be left alone with him loose, and me because my documents, my jewelry, my life were still in danger. Mason tore open the back door and sprinted toward my garage. "Call for backup," the female officer shouted to Daniels. But Daniels' voice came back calm, too calm. "Already did. Liar." We reached the garage just in time to see Mason throw open the side door and grab a large black duffel bag from behind my lawnmower. The sound of metal clinking inside made my stomach drop. "That's mine," shouted. He turned, grinning like a wolf. "Not anymore." The younger woman grabbed a garden rake from the wall and swung it. Mason ducked easily, but it was enough to slow him for me to shove the cane against his side and fire the stun again. He convulsed, dropping the bag. The female officer was suddenly there, cuffing him fully this time. "You're under arrest." I lunged for the bag, unzipping it with shaking hands. My diamond tennis bracelet. My grandmother's brooch. The gold watch Charles wore every Sunday. Oh, there. But the folder, the one with my confidential documents, was gone. Valerie had it. I stood there in the cold garage, holding my stolen jewelry, while in the distance, the sound of a car faded into the night. The younger woman touched my arm. "She's not done with you." I knew she was right. And worse, I had a feeling Officer Daniels wasn't either. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that follows a storm, a silence where you know the next wave is already building out there somewhere, waiting to hit you. Mason had been hauled away by the female officer. Her name was Officer Grant, while Officer Daniels claimed he needed to escort Ron back to his property before taking Valerie in. I watched from the front window as Daniels walked calmly to his cruiser, climbed in alone, and drove off in the opposite direction of the station. He didn't even look back at me. The younger woman, who now sat wrapped in one of my blankets on the couch, looked pale but alert. I still didn't know her name. We'd been too busy trying to survive to exchange introductions. Finally asked, "What should I call you?" She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the window as though she expected Valerie to burst back in at any second. "Claire," she said quietly. "Claire what?" "Just Claire for now." He nodded. I understood the need for caution. I'd lived long enough to know that names can be dangerous things if they end up in the wrong ears. I made us both tea, chamomile for me, black for her, and as we sat in my kitchen I pressed her gently for answers. "Why did Mason have you here? Did you know him?" Claire's fingers tightened around her mug. "I met him through a friend a few months ago. He seemed charming. Offered me a job helping with estate paperwork. Said he worked with private buyers. I didn't realize until it was too late that he was targeting widows, people with property, valuables. He'd get into their homes under the pretense of helping, then take what he wanted." He frowned. "And Valerie? She's worse. Mason's just a thief. Valerie, she's connected. She knows people who make things disappear. Documents, money, even people. I thought of the folder with my deeds, will, and stock certificates. Valerie had it now. And if Claire was right, she knew exactly how to use it. I think she's planning to sell that land of yours, Claire added, her voice dropping lower. And she's not doing it through legal channels. Once it's gone, you won't have any way to get it back. A cold heaviness settled in my chest. That land wasn't just property. It was a part of Charles's legacy. He'd fought to keep it out of developers' hands for years, saying it would be my safety net if anything happened to him. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth steady me. Then we'll have to make sure she doesn't sell it. Claire blinked. Maggie, you're 85. I raised an eyebrow. And still capable of thinking 10 steps ahead. Valerie isn't the first predator I've dealt with. And she won't be the last. Claire gave a small, reluctant smile. All right. What's your plan? That was the problem. I didn't have one yet. But I knew where to start. Officer Grant, I said. Within the hour, I had Grant's number from the business card she'd left behind. When she answered, her voice was brisk, professional. I wanted to ask about Daniels, I said, skipping pleasantries. Why didn't he bring Valerie in? There was a pause. I can't discuss an ongoing investigation, Mrs. Whitfield. This isn't an investigation, it's a cover-up, I shot back. Daniels knows her. I saw it in his face. He let her leave with my documents. Grant's silence told me more than her words could have. Finally she said, "Be careful who you accuse. If you're right, he's not someone you want to provoke without evidence." "I don't need to provoke him," I said. "I just need to find Valerie before she sells my life out from under me." Grant sighed. "If I hear anything, I'll call you." We hung up, and I knew she wouldn't call. If Daniels was involved, she'd be watched too. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me think Mason had escaped, that Valerie was creeping through my hallways again. I stayed up in the armchair by the front window, watching the street. Claire slept fitfully on the couch, muttering in her dreams. At around 3 a.m., a car rolled slowly past my house. It didn't stop, but it didn't speed up either. I caught the glint of blonde hair in the driver's seat. Valerie. She wanted me to know she could come back anytime. The next morning I decided to stop reacting and start acting. I dug through my desk until I found an old contact list from my hospital days. There was one name I circled, Evelyn Price, a former patient's mother who'd gone on to become a private investigator in Burlington. I'd kept her number, just in case. When I called, she answered on the second ring. "Maggie Whitfield. Haven't heard your voice in years. What's wrong?" "I need you to find a woman named Valerie," I said. "Blonde, tall, dangerous. She's got documents that belong to me, and she has a police officer in her pocket." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Text me everything you know. I'll start now." By evening she called back. "Your Valerie has a record under the name Valerie Kane. Fraud, extortion, intimidation, but nothing sticks. She's got connections in law enforcement just like you said. And Maggie, she's already been in touch with a buyer for that property upstate." I gripped the phone tighter. "When?" "Soon. Within the week. If she gets that deed signed over, it's gone." My mind raced. "Where's she staying?" "That's the problem," Evelyn said. "She moves around." But I traced her last card use. An upscale hotel in Montpelier. Room registered under a fake name, but the security footage is her. I glanced at Claire, who was listening intently. "We go tonight," I said. Evelyn chuckled. "You still have that stubborn streak." "All right. But Maggie, don't go in alone." That night, Evelyn met us 2 blocks from the hotel. She'd brought a camera, a recorder, and a quiet confidence that reminded me why I liked her. We slipped into the lobby, pretending to be guests. Evelyn had already found her room number. 412. As we approached the door, we heard voices inside. Valerie's was unmistakable. "Once the papers are signed, we transfer the funds offshore. No trail." A man answered. A voice I recognized instantly. Officer Daniels. My stomach turned. Claire's eyes widened. It's him. I leaned closer to the door, catching every word. Daniels said, once she's out of the picture, no one will contest the sale. Valerie laughed softly. Don't worry, I have a plan for that old woman. I felt Claire's hand tighten on my arm. What plan? Daniels asked. But Valerie's answer came out muffled, like she'd moved further from the door. I caught only fragments. Accident. No witnesses. Done by Friday. My chest tightened. Friday. That was 3 days away. Evelyn's eyes met mine. We need proof, she mouthed. I nodded, but before we could decide our next move, the door handle rattled. We stepped back just as the door swung open, and Valerie stood there, her smirk widening when she saw me. Well, she said slowly, I was wondering when you'd stop waiting for me to come to you. Valerie didn't look surprised to see me. She looked entertained. Her smirk was the kind a cat wears when it's cornered a mouse and knows the game is already over. Well, she purred, leaning against the doorframe, if it isn't my favorite 85-year-old. And you brought friends. Her gaze flicked to Claire and Evelyn. How cute. A little rescue squad. Evelyn, unfazed, lifted her phone. Step aside, Valerie. We already have enough to bring you in. Valerie's smile didn't falter. Do you? Or do you have a couple of half-heard sentences outside a hotel room that no jury would ever believe? Especially when Officer Daniels says otherwise. Behind her, I caught sight of Daniels. He was standing near the desk, sleeves rolled up, holding a folder, the folder. My folder. The one with my deeds, will, and other documents. You've got something of mine, I said, my voice low but steady. Daniels raised an eyebrow. Not anymore. This is evidence now. Evidence of what? That you're both thieves. Evelyn shot back. Valerie's smirk widened. Maggie, we really should talk about your future. I'd hate for it to end. Abruptly. Claire shifted closer to me, her shoulders tense. She's stalling, she whispered. She was right. Valerie wasn't here to argue. She was deciding whether to slam the door in our faces or pull us in. I could see it in her eyes. Before I could decide how to play it, Valerie stepped back and gestured toward the room. Come in, ladies. Let's have a civilized conversation. You too, Maggie. After all, this is about you. Evelyn's hand brushed mine briefly, a silent question. Do we go in? If we stayed in the hallway, we risked losing the folder forever. If we went in, we might not walk out. I made my choice. 5 minutes, I said. Valerie's grin was pure satisfaction. Plenty. Inside, the room was exactly what I expected from someone like her. Luxurious but impersonal. Champagne on ice sat untouched on the dresser. A leather briefcase lay open on the bed, stuffed with what looked like cash and more documents. Daniels closed the folder and set it on the desk, deliberately placing his hand over it. Let's cut to the chase, Valerie said, perching on the arm of a chair. We're selling that land of yours, Maggie. You can fight it, but by the time you realize the paperwork's gone through, the buyer will be someone you can't touch. I forced myself to keep my voice even. And if I don't sign, Daniels answered for her, then you'll be indisposed. Claire's fists clenched. You're threatening an old woman. Valerie's eyes sparkled with mock innocence. Oh, sweetheart, it wouldn't be a threat. It'd be an accident. Old people have falls. They forget to turn off the stove. They have medical episodes. The way she said it made my skin crawl. This wasn't just about money. She enjoyed the cruelty. I looked at Daniels. And you're fine with this? Throwing away your badge for her? His jaw tightened. The badge doesn't pay enough. Valerie does. Evelyn, still holding her phone, shifted slightly toward the door, angling the camera. Valerie noticed. She said, her smile vanishing. Put the phone down. When Evelyn didn't move, Daniels reached under his jacket. The glint of metal made Claire gasp. All right, Valerie said smoothly. I'm a generous woman. Maggie, sign over the property deed tonight and you can go home. Your friends too. No one has to get hurt. I took a deep breath, letting my mind race. I'd been in operating rooms where seconds determined life or death. This felt exactly the same. What if, I said slowly, I told you the deed you have is worthless? That got her attention. Her eyes narrowed. Go on. It's a decoy, I lied. Charles and I made a copy years ago with false details, in case someone tried to steal it. The real one is in a safety deposit box. And you'll never get it without me. Daniels frowned. She's bluffing. Am I? I said, locking eyes with Valerie. There was a tense silence. Then she stood, moving toward me until we were inches apart. Then you're coming with us, she said softly. Right now. Claire stepped in front of me. You're not taking her anywhere. Daniels raised his gun slightly. Move. Evelyn's hand tightened on her phone, but she didn't lower it. Everything you've just said is recorded. The second I hit send, it goes to 3 different people, including a reporter who loves dirty cop stories. For the first time, Daniels looked unsure. Valerie, however, only smiled wider. That's fine, she said. We don't need to shoot anyone here. She glanced at Daniels. Plan B. Before I could ask what that meant, Daniels reached behind the desk and pressed something. Sharp click. Then, somewhere behind us, the door to the hallway slammed shut and locked. Evelyn cursed under her breath. Valerie's smile was almost sweet. We'll talk about that deed, Maggie. But first, she nodded toward the balcony. Let's take a little ride. Claire turned to look and froze. Outside the sliding glass door, a black van had pulled up below. The side door was open. 2 men in dark clothes stood waiting. The black van idled below the balcony, exhaust curling into the cold night air. The 2 men standing by it didn't look like movers or delivery drivers. They looked like the kind of men who didn't ask questions, just followed orders. Valerie's voice was calm, almost pleasant, but her eyes glittered like broken glass. You have 2 choices, Maggie. You can walk down to that van or you can be carried. Either way, we're going for a little trip. Claire moved so she was standing shoulder to shoulder with me. You're not taking her anywhere. Daniels took a step forward, the gun in his hand catching the dim hotel light. You're done playing hero, kid. Step aside. Evelyn's voice was steady, but I could hear the tension under it. And if she doesn't, you're going to shoot us all in a hotel room. You'll never get out of this clean. Valerie's smile didn't fade. Oh, Evelyn, that's the beauty of it. We don't have to do it here. She looked at Daniels. Get them moving. Daniels grabbed Claire's arm first, trying to yank her toward the balcony. She fought him, kicking out, her boot catching him in the shin. He swore, shoving her back against the wall. I'd been quiet until now, letting them think I was just the fragile old woman in the room. But I'd been inching my cane closer to my side with my free hand. The stun button was already pressed. When Daniels reached for me, I jammed the cane into his ribs. The crackle of electricity filled the room. He convulsed, dropping his gun and stumbled back, hitting the desk hard. The folder with my documents slid to the floor. Evelyn lunged for it. Valerie was faster. She scooped it up and backed toward the balcony door, her eyes never leaving me. Enough, Valerie snapped. You're making this harder than it has to be, Maggie. And I don't like hard. You're not getting me into that van, I said, my voice steady even though my pulse was hammering. Her smile was thin now. Oh, I will. One way or another. She slid the balcony door open, the cold air sweeping into the room. The 2 men outside looked up, one of them tapping his watch impatiently. Daniels was recovering fast, pushing himself to his feet. His face twisted with rage. Evelyn had put her phone back in her pocket but kept her hand there, thumb moving. I prayed she was sending the recording somewhere safe. Valerie gestured toward the open balcony. Last chance, Maggie. Walk. Claire moved to block me again, but Daniels grabbed her and shoved her toward the bed. She hit it hard, gasping. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, cane in hand, and jabbed the tip toward Valerie's wrist. She jerked back, but not fast enough. The stun caught her just enough to make her drop the folder. Papers scattered across the carpet. Evelyn dove for them. One of the balcony men shouted, starting to climb up toward us. Daniels lunged for Evelyn, but Claire was back on her feet. She swung the champagne bottle from the dresser with all her strength. It connected with Daniel's shoulder with a sickening thud. He staggered but didn't go down. The second balcony man was halfway over the railing now. Valerie recovered quickly, her face twisted in fury. "You just signed your death warrant, Maggie." She lunged at me, shoving me backward toward the balcony. My heels scraped on the carpet. I grabbed the railing, the cold metal biting into my palms. Below, the van side door yawned open like the mouth of something waiting to swallow me whole. Evelyn shouted, "Maggie, duck!" I dropped just as Evelyn hurled the desk lamp. It hit Valerie in the shoulder, knocking her off balance. But her hand shot out, tangling in my coat. And suddenly I was teetering, half inside the room, half over the balcony. The drop wasn't far enough to kill me, but it was far enough to break bones. Claire screamed my name. Valerie leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. "I told you, you're coming with me." Then she shoved. The shove came with more force than I expected for someone so slim. My hands lost their grip on the railing, and the cold night air swallowed me whole. For a heartbeat, all I saw was the black maw of the van below, its open door waiting like a trap. I braced for impact, but instead of dropping straight into it, my left side smashed against the balcony railing one floor down. Pain exploded through my ribs, knocking the breath out of me. I tumbled awkwardly, hitting the pavement beside the van instead of inside it. My head cracked against the cold asphalt, and white sparks danced in my vision. "Maggie!" Claire's voice screamed from above. One of the men by the van grabbed my arm before I could get up. His grip was like iron, yanking me toward the open door. My cane had fallen somewhere behind me, useless now. "Let me go." My voice came out hoarse, but I kicked at him, landing a glancing blow to his shin. It barely slowed him. The second man moved in to help, grabbing my other arm. My feet left the ground as they lifted me toward the van. Inside it was dark, too dark, but I saw a pair of zip ties waiting on the floor. Then a sudden crash from above. A figure dropped from the balcony, Claire. She hit the ground hard but rolled, coming up with something in her hand. "I came." She didn't hesitate. She slammed the stun tip into the first man's side. He howled, releasing me and stumbling back. The second man turned toward her, which gave me just enough time to wrench free and shove him away. "Run!" Claire yelled. We bolted, my side screaming in pain, heading for the alley that cut behind the hotel. Shouts erupted behind us, Valerie's voice sharp with rage. We made it halfway down the alley before the sound of tires squealing told me the van had pulled away from the curb. The echo of boots on asphalt closed in from behind. "They're coming," Claire gasped. I spotted a metal side door to the hotel's kitchen up ahead. I grabbed the handle, it was locked. Claire banged on it with her fist. "Open up. Please," she shouted. A young man in a white apron cracked it open, eyes wide at the sight of us. "What?" "No time." I shoved past him, pulling Claire inside. We ducked behind a stack of crates just as the alley door rattled again. The chef peered out, then stepped back, shaking his head. "They went the other way." He lied to whoever was outside. The door shut. The footsteps faded. Claire and I stayed crouched for a moment, both catching our breath. My ribs throbbed with every inhale. She finally looked at me, eyes fierce. "You're hurt." "I've been worse," I lied. She gave a shaky laugh. "You're impossible." Once we were sure it was clear, we slipped out the front of the hotel. Evelyn was there in her car, leaning over the wheel with panic written all over her face. "Get in," she barked. We piled in, and she sped off before we'd even shut the doors. "Where's the folder?" asked. Evelyn's hands tightened on the wheel. Gone. Valerie still has it. And Maggie, she's not running anymore. She's hunting. We drove straight to Evelyn's small office, a cramped space above a bakery that smelled faintly of cinnamon. She locked the door behind us. Claire collapsed into a chair. I stayed standing, pacing. My mind replayed Valerie's words in the hotel. By Friday. That's 2 days, I said. 2 days before she either sells the land or makes good on her accident plan. Evelyn sat at her desk and started typing furiously. We've got 2 options. We either find where she's keeping that folder and take it back tonight, or we make her think the deed is worthless so she drops it entirely. She won't drop it, I said. She'll squeeze me just to prove she can. Claire leaned forward. Then we need to hit her where it hurts. She's not just after money, she's after control. We take that away, she loses. Evelyn glanced up from her screen. I found her buyer. Name's Victor DeLuca. Runs shell companies out of Florida. If Valerie's meeting him, it'll be somewhere secure. I moved to stand beside her. So we find that meeting. She nodded slowly. And crash it. That night, while Evelyn made calls to contacts who owed her favors, Claire and I spread out the city map. We circled likely meeting spots, private airfields, luxury restaurants with back rooms, a storage facility known for under-the-table deals. By midnight, Evelyn had her answer. Tomorrow. Noon. Private dock on Lake Champlain. Valerie's meeting DeLuca on his yacht. I stared at the map. That means she'll have the folder with her. Claire frowned. And she'll have security. Evelyn smiled grimly. So will we. The next day was gray and cold, the kind of weather that seeps into your bones. We arrived at the marina an hour before the meeting, staying out of sight in Evelyn's car. She had binoculars trained on the dock. There, she said finally. Valerie, in a long camel coat, striding toward a gleaming white yacht. Daniels was beside her, carrying a black leather briefcase. That's it, Evelyn murmured. Folders in there. Claire's jaw tightened. Then we have one shot. We waited until they boarded. Evelyn's plan was simple, too simple for my comfort, but it was all we had. She'd create a distraction on the dock while Claire and I slipped aboard through the service hatch and grabbed the folder. It went wrong almost immediately. Evelyn walked up to the dock guard with a clipboard, pretending to be from the marina office. As he argued with her, Claire and I slipped toward the side of the yacht. I just put my hand on the rail when a voice behind me said, "Going somewhere, Maggie?" Turn. Valerie. She was standing on the lower deck, the folder in one hand and that same cold smile on her face. "I told you," she said, stepping closer. "You don't get to decide how this ends." She nodded toward Daniels, who appeared beside her with a pistol. Claire moved to stand in front of me, but Valerie shook her head. "Not here, not now. We have guests coming and I don't want a scene. You'll come with us quietly, or I drop this folder in the lake and make sure no one ever finds it." She held it over the water, her fingers loose on the edge. Evelyn's voice was shouting something from the dock, but I couldn't hear the words over the pounding of my own heartbeat. 2 days had shrunk to 2 seconds. And in those 2 seconds, I realized the only way to win was to take Valerie's choice away from her. Completely. Valerie dangled the folder over the icy lake like it was nothing. Her smirk daring me to test her. "You've got exactly 3 seconds, Maggie," she said. 1, 2. I didn't wait for 3. With every ounce of strength in my 85-year-old body, I shoved Claire hard toward the side railing. She stumbled into Valerie, sending her off balance. The folder slipped from her hand, but instead of hitting the water, it landed on the deck with a flat thump. Daniels reacted instantly, swinging his gun toward me. I dove forward, grabbing the folder just as a shot cracked through the cold air. Pain seared past my ear, but I kept moving, clutching the documents tight against my chest. Claire kicked at Daniels, knocking his arm upward so the second shot went into the air. From the dock, Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. "Police! Drop your weapon!" For a split second I thought she was bluffing, but then I saw them. Not Daniel's buddies, but actual uniformed officers swarming the dock. Evelyn's favors had paid off. Daniels froze, his eyes darting from Valerie to the approaching officers. Valerie's smirk finally cracked. "This isn't over, Maggie," she hissed. "Oh, it's over," I said, straightening despite the ache in my ribs. "You're finished." She lunged toward me, but Claire was faster. She grabbed Valerie's coat, yanked her backward, and drove her into the deck rail. Valerie gasped, winded, and before she could recover, 2 officers were there, wrenching her arms behind her back. Daniels made the mistake of trying to run. He didn't make it far. An officer tackled him before he even hit the dock. The gun skidded across the wood and into the lake with a hollow plunk. I stood there, breathing hard, the folder still in my hands. For a moment, all I could do was stare at it, at the crumpled edges and the faint smudge of dirt on the corner, and feel the weight of everything it represented. It wasn't just paper. It was my life, my independence, my proof that I wasn't just some frail old woman people could push around. An officer approached me. "Mrs. Whitfield, are you all right?" I nodded slowly. "I am now." Claire came to my side, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. "You saved yourself back there." I looked at her, really looked at her. "No, we saved each other." Evelyn joined us, her grin wide. "Told you I had connections." The moment I sent that recording from the hotel, my contact at the State Bureau got the green light. "Daniels is going away for a long time." "And Valerie?" "Yes." Evelyn's grin turned sharp. "With the charges we've got on her, extortion, kidnapping, conspiracy, she'll be lucky to see daylight in the next 20 years. I felt a deep, quiet satisfaction settle over me. It wasn't loud or gloating. It was the kind of satisfaction that comes from knowing you've outlasted people who thought they could erase you. The police insisted on taking statements at the marina's small office. Valerie and Daniels were locked in separate cruisers outside, their faces twisted with frustration. I sat with Claire, sipping hot coffee someone had brought me, while Evelyn flipped through the folder to ensure nothing was missing. Everything was there. My will, the property deeds, the stock certificates, even the letters I'd kept tucked inside, private pieces of my life I hadn't intended for anyone to see. I took them back and slipped them into my bag. "They're never leaving my sight again." Claire hesitated, then said softly, "You know, if you ever want company, I don't really have anywhere to go right now." I studied her. She'd been through hell because of Mason and Valerie. But she'd also risked herself for me more than once in the last 48 hours. "You've got a home," I said simply. "If you want it." Her smile was small but real. "I'd like that." It was late afternoon by the time I finally walked back into my own house. The light slanted through the front windows, catching on the polished floorboards. Everything was quiet again. Not the tense, suffocating quiet of the other night, but the safe, familiar kind. I set the folder in my desk drawer and locked it. Then, just because I could, I double-locked the front door and checked the alarm system twice. Claire wandered into the living room, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her yet. "You ever think about how close that was?" she asked. I eased into my favorite armchair, wincing at the pull in my ribs. "More than I'd like to. But close doesn't count, Claire. Or here. We won." She nodded, then glanced at the window. "Do you think Valerie will try something again?" I met her gaze, steady. "If she does, she'll find I'm not any easier to take down the second time." Claire laughed softly, then headed into the kitchen. I sat there a moment longer, letting the warmth of the house seep into me. I'd been tested, physically, mentally, in ways I hadn't expected at my age. And I'd come out the other side not just intact, but stronger. Valerie thought she could turn me into a victim. Instead, she'd reminded me of who I was. Margaret Whitfield, 85, retired surgeon, and very much in control of my own life.